Hello and welcome to Honest Faith Conversations. As always, I am your co-host Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias, and today we're going to talk about the movie Logan.
Welcome to the show, and if this is your first show with us, with Honest Faith Conversations, a special welcome to you as well. This is going to be a little bit more of a sadder episode, only because of the it's very sad themes in the film, and so anyway.
It's sad for us folks who grew up with Wolverine throughout the movies.
Yeah, well, not just Wolverine, but Charles Xavier, and so. But with that being said,
spoilers!
Spoiler alert! You're getting into that before we even start with the spoiler alert.
Sorry, don't hate us, please.
So if you have not gone and seen Logan, you probably should before you listen to this podcast. Of course, we've got a lot of other podcast episodes based on other works that may actually suit you until you actually do see Logan. But it's been a few weeks now. It's been close to a month that it's been out.
Yeah, it's been about a month.
You've had time. The summary of the movie, the summary and our opinions on the movie, I thought it was good. It was, I think, the way to go with a superhero movie for an established franchise at this point in the game. I think that I think Marvel itself could learn a lot from what Fox did with this movie. It was a very much, it paid tribute to the past without being too in the past.
Yeah,
it was its own thing.
In fact, they don't bring up events that happen in the past movies very often. There's hints at them, but it's not like if you didn't see the movies, it's not like you're going to be lost in what's going on right now. Yeah,
it's a very much standalone movie. Because you all know the character, you all know Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. You've probably seen one of those movies in the past 17 years.
At least one of them.
Yeah, he's been Wolverine for 17 years. Well, he was announced before that as Wolverine, so it's been a long time that we've gotten used to Hugh Jackman as Logan, as Wolverine, or James, whichever name you want to go with for him. So he has a lot of names. Summary of the movie is, it follows very, very loosely to the Old Man Logan comic.
Kinda, sorta.
Yeah, very loose.
Basically, they're both Old Man Logan, and that's probably where it stops. Oh, and he wanders. There's movement involved.
And he and Charles Xavier are together, and they're in Mexico, which is the same. But that's about it. That's where the similarities end.
Yeah. Just again, a brief summary. So essentially, something has been happening to where there's not as many mutants anymore. Like, people just stopped giving birth to mutants. So they're not entirely sure why. Also, there's hinted at that something happened to the other X-Men, and it was probably most likely caused by Professor X.
Yeah. In this, it's the year 2029, so it's well after the events of many of the X-Men movies, aside from Days of Future Past, which I don't even remember what year that was set in.
I don't know.
The future bits of Days of Future Past. But then again, that whole timeline has been reset, and the whole X-Men timeline in their cinematic universe is kind of a little confusing. So
so they've been in Mexico for at least a year.
Yeah,
and Logan has been. Sorry if you guys heard that burp of our dog in the background. Anyway, so Logan has been taking care of Xavier along with
Caliban.
Yeah, Caliban. And you can tell that there's something really, really wrong with Xavier. He's been getting these seizures, and you can actually see that in the trailers. Like, that's what the tremors are, if you guys didn't watch the movie. And
We give them spoiler alerts, so you
that's
know.
true. That's true. Long story.
They're still listening.
Long story short, X-23, whose name is Laura,
Yes.
is actually like they meet up, and Logan is tasked with getting her to North Dakota of all places, and he of course reluctantly does it because he doesn't want to, because he wants to make sure that Xavier is safe. Mm-hmm. And shenanigans ensue.
Yeah,
and people die.
we can, that's almost every movie there. Shenanigans ensue, and people die.
And people die.
Unless those movies are where nobody dies. But this is a superhero movie, so people are going to die.
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that here a little bit. The main theme that I think runs throughout this movie is what I'm calling relationships define the soul. Mm-hmm. Is that the whole movie is very inspired by westerns. It is a western styled movie.
It's a modern western.
Yeah, and I mean, beautifully shot, beautifully written and done. And I mean, it's not your traditional superhero movie where it's all like computer effects and super special effects. No, it's very gritty and very dark and
yeah. Honestly, I don't know if you guys read Miguel's blog post last week, but he was true in telling you guys that when it comes to violence, like I have a pretty weak stomach, especially for like realistic violence, and this was like on the border for me.
Yeah, I mean, this was what we've wanted Wolverine to be for so long. Mm-hmm. Is he was his comic book self. He was the
Wolverine for adults.
Yeah. He was the putting his claws through people's heads and blood everywhere and people being beheaded and, clawed up and
yep.
Yeah, he was pretty bloody.
Yep.
So one of the big pieces of the film, and I think that this is both in metaphor and in very much literal sense, is that you have Logan fighting with himself.
Literal, as in like he's fighting his clone.
Yeah, he's fighting a clone who, as they said in the movie, X-24 has no soul, which I think what it is just, it's experiences. And this is, I called it here Logan versus Nega Logan, which... or you can call him Clogan. Because sorry, that was bad. But I called it Nega Logan because of Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I like that terminology from there. But it's the symbology of him fighting his darker self, fighting the darker impulses within himself,
and they keep bringing it up in the movie too, like this. He was you at your worst point. Yeah.
And, I mean, he, even with the very beginning when Charles Xavier says to Logan that, you haven't been getting enough sleep, and he explains this to Laura later on, is that she was awakened by a nightmare, and he says, I have nightmares too. And she says, I was being hurt, and he says, in mine are different. I was hurting people. Mm-hmm. And that's his whole struggle, and you saw this a little bit in the Wolverine, the second solo Wolverine movie. Even though they do reference the first solo Wolverine movie,
it's okay. It just barely. I wouldn't even say he mentions reference. It. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's where the adamantium bullet is from, and even though with the resetting of timelines, I don't know how he got that, because I think things would have been different.
No, because he was...
But Mystique was Stryker, and in Days of Future Past at the end there, which it's all gotten complicated.
Yeah, let's move on from that. Let's not dwell on the past.
Talking about Logan versus Nega Logan. We have... one of the big things, the biggest struggle in that is the emotions versus logic, where you have Nega Logan, who is just, fully in those emotions, that is fully driven by the rage.
Yes, they even, and at a certain point too, they even like point out things to make him angry. He's like, do you see that? Do you see? He's dead. He did it. Trying to make him even more angry, which, seeing that he doesn't have those experiences with these people, I don't understand why that would make him more angry.
It's just, you see this when, in other instances when Logan has that pure rage, bloodlust, running through him, is that, Hugh Jackman has done a brilliant job of portraying him for 17 years, and almost any X-Men movie you can take your pick, is that there's that moment where he gets fueled by rage, and he goes off and does something stupid because he's fueled by rage, and mostly it's like Magneto kind of egging him on to make him angry. I'm just calling back to the very first X-Men movie, when he has them pinned up against the wall, and yeah. Even though apparently they knew each other well before that because of Days of Future Past, man, they really had needed some continuity directors working on these movies. You have Logan, who at this point in time he's had enough experiences with the X-Men, with Charles Xavier, with everyone else, that he's no longer really ruled by his passions, that he has that logic part of him. Yeah,
he's no longer savage. The reason why he's named Wolverine, part of it is because of the out of control, angry fighting that he does. Yeah. And he's
he is savage.
He's toned it down a little bit, though. Yeah.
But he's not played by a savage. Like Fred Savage.
Okay, just moving on.
Sorry. Yeah, that's who they can get to replace Hugh Jackman. Oh. Fred Savage. That would be hilarious. No, probably wouldn't. You have also in this, you have with the emotions were the meaningless violence versus the fighting for something. And this is in that instance where his trouble sleeping is because of, he knows that he was involved in meaningless violence. He knows that he's hurt people. Oh yeah. That even when he was given something to fight for, that he was still troubled by the violence that he caused, the things that he did, and this is, well, speaking of that blog post that I wrote, that's something that I wrote about this week, is that I think that
which you can find at the website, by the way.
Yeah, thehonestfaith.com. I talk about violence and how those of us who enjoy some of these violent, movies or video games or other things like that, that it does feed a part of ourselves, and that our reactions to it they're not necessarily bad, but there's something that we need to examine. There's something that we need to, bring to light and talk about with other people, because there might be something wrong with those reactions or with our, ourselves, that we need to examine, and we need to, really take stock of. And I think that's what Logan is doing. And though I think that he shouldn't feel bad for some of the things that he has done in his life, there's other things that he obviously should.
Yeah, well, of course, we don't really know exactly what has transpired since. Yeah. Because essentially there's that big, Logan himself jumped time. So he doesn't really know what happened in between the time when he was thrown back in the past.
Well, he probably
and
did
came back to the future.
Caught up, because there's that scene at the end of Days of Future Past where Charles Xavier says, "Oh, you're back."
But there's a difference, because that is essentially being told a story about what's going on. He never really experienced it himself.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
so he's experienced everything, is what you're saying. That Wolverine is the only constant in the X-Men universe.
He is the only constant in the X-Men universe.
Okay.
But the only time
if I ever get unstuck in time, that's where I'm going to be. I'm going to be looking for Wolverine in that. He's the constant. Well, Hugh Jackman will be my constant.
He is though, because he's the only one that has. In the time jump.
Yeah, and he's the only one who has ever played Wolverine on the screen with this.
As of right now.
Yeah, and I mean, even though some of the other characters have been like played by other actors in other movies and stuff like that, so yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So I'm saying that like those
experiences are all his. Like they're like he's experienced the entire thing.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying in the timeline, yes,
Yeah.
but there's a chunk of like legit time
Yeah,
that he doesn't remember.
Yeah.
Because like his mind jumped ahead to the to the future.
Yeah, from Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Do you see?
Yeah, and so last week we talked about Iron Fist. We talked about Marvel's Iron Fist on Netflix, and we talked about how there is this black and white in it throughout all of it, and that's not the way life is. Is that it's very much shades of gray, and I think that's what Charles Xavier is trying to tell Logan throughout the entire movie, is that there are shades of gray, that life is about shades of gray, that there is no black and white, that you don't have to feel bad about those things because they're in the past, that they're gone, so you need to just live in the moment.
Yeah.
Live for what's right now, and that's why I think that Charles doesn't like taking the meds, because it takes him out of the moment, takes him out of himself.
Yeah.
And it makes him question reality, and him quoting the whole Taco Bell commercial and everything else. It's very much what he's saying to Logan in this, is to feel it, to feel that moment, feel what it's like to have a family, to have a home, to just be.
But you also feel for Logan too, because I mean, when he was part of the X-Men, like there was times when he did feel that, and now everybody is gone, and we don't know exactly what transpired. Like maybe he blames himself a little bit for it, but like it is kind of tough. Once you possibly had a family, to trying to make yourself like be okay feeling that kind of joy again.
Yeah. And I mean, because you saw that he's not had a great life. If you ever watched X-Men Origins, that's probably the only thing you can take away from that movie, is that Wolverine didn't have a good life. But I mean, his father throwing him and Liev Schreiber's Sabretooth, that's another one that is in continuity. There's that Liev Schreiber's Sabretooth and the Sabretooth from the first two X-Men films. 3 X-Men? Was he in the third one? I can't remember. They're completely different characters, completely different saber teeth.
Why are we talking about this?
Tooths. No, I'm just saying that his instance, his idea of family is already skewed.
Okay.
That his matrix for family are skewed because his father kicked them out. His only family was his brother Sabretooth in the cinematic universe, and
and he never had like him and I guess he kind of had a thing with Phoenix, but not necessarily.
Well, Jean Grey,
yeah,
because they treated Phoenix badly, so she was not really Phoenix.
But like he couldn't even he was seriously in love with her and couldn't even have that family because she was still with Scott. So
yeah, and the woman that he loved before that, according to X-Men Origins, is betrayed him and was a spy or something. I can't remember. I watched that movie once and I was like, I'm not going to watch this movie ever again. Even though they got a much better Deadpool now, even though it was Ryan Reynolds before, it was bad Ryan Reynolds.
Well, and it kind of brings up the point of what is.
It brings up the point of what the importance of family.
Yeah.
And that. That's what he was struggling with through this entire thing.
Because he's missing it, because he doesn't have that feeling of importance of the family.
Yeah, and that's why they kept reiterating to him that even though she was manufactured, kind of clone of him, that X-23 was his daughter.
Well, she's not a clone. We find out that
that they used his DNA material to give her mutant powers that were his mutant powers.
Yeah. Which,
granted, that doesn't make her blood, but I mean, it's still
his DNA, though.
Yeah, and that's what they were trying to do throughout the entire thing. But in the comic books, she was a clone, and that that embryo was encountered the DNA from Logan, which I think is a much better story of doing that, because then she is blood. That would she would have his blood. She would.
But then he wouldn't be her father.
Well, yeah, he would still. Well, she would be his blood, his offspring, because taking his DNA and so. Even though it's a clone from birth and a birth clone, is there two different ways of doing that? Would be tank bred clone and a birthed clone?
Yes, because that's two different
Dolly
things. Because
the
the
sheep
reason
had that birthed clone.
Yes, because the X-24, he was actually pieced together as an adult.
Yeah, a tank bred clone.
Yes, and with the problem with what they called... Well, she's not just X-23. Apparently X-23 is a bunch of different kids in this, in the movie. It's not just her. And they were all given birth. It kind of explains why there's been a lot of disappearances of women in Mexico, which is actually a real thing.
Not just women. The drug cartels have it's bad in Mexico. I worry for my dad when he does mission work down there.
It's not necessarily the drugs. It's, the human trafficking.
Human trafficking, yeah, for sure.
And it's creeping up into the United States too. And it's...
No, it's horrible. I mean, here's something to freak you out if you ever want to go check out Disappeared on Hulu. It was on the Investigation Discovery Channel. Yes. But it's basically the stories of people who have disappeared, and for some reason this fascinated me, so I watched all the way through all of the episodes they had on Hulu, and all of them, I'm just wow, it's just so easy for somebody to just disappear, just completely disappear off the face of the planet, and we have no idea where they went or how they went there or.
A lot of them, though, they do speculate that it was some kind of human trafficking.
Yeah, and that's part of this film, and that's what I think the director did a fantastic job of doing, was bringing in actual real life issues and talking about them through this film. Which, I mean, we can probably make another 2-part episode about Logan because it was that good. I mean, you have also, to Logan, you have this moment of chosen family. There is this whole segment of the film. I think that you could probably call it the third act, maybe second act, where he's with the family.
Oh, yeah.
And the family invites him in, and, he's claiming that Charles Xavier is his father, and that Laura is his daughter. And for sure, and then there were moments in that where
they were happy.
Where Logan started to believe the lie. Where you could tell that when he said "my father," and stuff like that, and even Charles Xavier calls him, or says, "My son can help you." Even though he's ribbing Logan throughout the entire thing, is that there was still that instance where you saw that he did feel that too, that Charles Xavier does feel, for Logan in that way as well, like a father-son kind of dynamic.
Well, absolutely. And even right now with Logan, taking care of Xavier, you can tell that he's doing it more in a, family sort of way. This is my duty. I am supposed to take care of you. You are the last of my kind, and this is what I'm supposed to do. Yeah.
And there's this instance where the family invites Logan and Charles Xavier and Laura back to the farm, which we're talking about. But there was something in the beauty in that simple request of having strangers over for dinner that it just struck me.
Because people don't do it anymore.
People don't do it anymore, but it's also something that I wish that I could have for my own life. Is that I just listened to this morning. I listened to StoryCorps podcast, and they had this episode about grandparents. And this one guy was telling a story about his grandfather that every Sunday he was the super of this apartment complex, and that every Sunday he would make dinner, a meal for the apartment complex, and people would come. Anyway, go and listen to the StoryCorps podcast. That's a fantastic podcast. But when I was listening to that, I was thinking about Logan. I was thinking about this instance where they had them around the dinner table and they were all laughing and joking with each other and just having just a meal together, breaking bread. And it
wasn't fancy. Like, it was clearly like this is the meal she had planned, for everybody to eat that night.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is that's what I believe Eucharist in the Christian church to be, is people coming around a table and breaking bread together and just shedding all of their differences and coming together for that moment and just being in that moment. Like Charles Xavier says to Logan in this moment, is just feel it. Just feel what it's like to have a family for a bit. Feel what it's like to have a home. And I mean, that's we have a home, we have a family we're building here with each other, and I mean, that's just something that I want to do. I want to bring others into our family, bring others into our home, and let them experience that safety, that what I experience here every day with you and Peter, with just that those moments of a family, of safety. Is that I want to be that for other people. I want to be that safe place. And so that brings me to my next point, which is kind of two. This is kind of wrapping up both the relationships define the soul, and that a moment at the end where what Logan says is, so this is what it feels like.
Yeah.
That he's not just talking about death, but he's talking about having a family, having a home.
See, and that's, like, when he said that, immediately I thought, so he finally, feels like this is what it means to have somebody, love me. This is what it feels like to have somebody, cry over me. Yeah. To feel these other emotions over me. I didn't think that he was talking about feeling so this is what it feels like to finally be slipping into death, because multiple times throughout his life, obviously, he should have died. But the way that his body regenerated, he never crossed that line. Yeah. And at this point, maybe he felt that, the sleepy sensation of his, soul slipping away is kind of what I always, imagine it to be, kind of just this, just fading. And maybe that's what he was feeling, and that's what he was talking about was... that's what it feels like. But I like to think that's what this feels like, was more about the family.
But my point is that I think this really, he struggles with setting the metrics for what a life well lived is. And I think that this, kind of wraps up that point of the relationships define the soul, but it also opens up a new point of, so this is what it feels like, is that it's letting death make way for resurrection in this. I think I've talked about this before, but there was a priest that I talked to recently that had said that's one of the things that Christians do horribly at, is that we celebrate resurrection, but we do a very poor job of letting things die so that they may be resurrected. And I think in this instance, Logan knows that his legacy will live on in X-23 in Laura, and that Charles Xavier in his death scene kind of knew, when he was talking about the Sunseeker, knew that his legacy would live on in Logan and in Laura, and that that his legacy was good, a good one, and that they were leaving a good legacy. It was not just saying goodbye; it was a much larger being at peace.
Yeah.
even though, you know, their deaths were violent and bloody and all this other stuff, that it was still a, you know, I did the right thing kind of instance. And I mean, it was beautiful. Just the movie in its composition was beautiful.
I know, like, I'm like getting all teary-eyed just thinking about it. Gosh, yeah, sorry. I'm getting emotional over here.
Well, since we're running out of time, we're going to open up our controversial issues, and we have a lot of them that were brought up in this movie. The first one is the R rating, which, you know, I know a lot of people are like, why did you go for an R rating? But this movie needed it.
Yeah, no.
To make the movie he wanted to make, he needed that R rating.
Well, and I think he needed the R rating.
Like he couldn't have gotten it if Deadpool didn't happen.
That's true.
Like, he would have to make that a PG-13 movie, and there's no way that movie could have been made well with being just PG-13.
Well, because historically with in Hollywood, the movies that make the most money are usually PG-13.
Yeah.
Because the family can bring, you know, the majority of their, you know, children with them. However, with Deadpool, it was proven, well, clearly, don't take your children to Deadpool.
Yeah.
Don't take your children to Deadpool. We actually saw a kid when we went to Deadpool. Like, he was there, and I was like, what?
Well, you were pregnant, and when we went to see it, that was pretty funny. The person we went with was kind of like, yeah, I'm going with a youth minister and his pregnant wife to see Deadpool. And so that was pretty funny. What's funny is that we also rewatched Deadpool like the day after we brought our son home from the hospital. Mm-hmm. So we did watch it with a child.
Yeah, but he's not going to remember. But anyway, but I think one of the reasons why it needed to be in our movie, and I'm glad it was in our movie, was because he wanted to bring some kind of sadness and some kind of like poignancy to the themes of the movie, and I feel like if he had to tone down some of the scenes, it wouldn't have been the same. Especially when Logan is lamenting about the amount of violence he's had.
Oh yeah,
like he's done, and how many people he has killed.
Well, and that had to be shown. That had to be shown so you could remember how bad it's gotten and how bad he was. Mm-hmm. I mean,
and how bad he feels about it. Like even like at the very first scene, he's just like, guys, you don't want to do this, please. Like he's like almost like begging them, like just go away because this is going to turn bad.
Yeah,
and people are going to die. Essentially, like he doesn't.
Yeah, he's like, you're going to die. I'm going to have some wounds that are going to take a while to heal, but
yeah. And also with the violence, the one I wanted to bring up earlier, and I think now is probably a good time too, is that Laura, like when they're talking about violence, when her and Logan are talking about the violence they've each encountered and have done themselves, she's like, yeah, but everybody I have hurt has been a bad guy.
Yeah, and that's something that he says, you know, in that is that those lines are blurry. He doesn't really say that in so many words, but I think that's the whole theme of this as well, is that's. I mean, because they pull like an iconic line from Shane, an old Western, which is, you know, a brilliant movie. But, you know, that Western that you can't break a man from his mold, that a man is what he is. And that once you start killing, that crosses a line that makes you something else. And we've talked about this before with soldiers coming back from war, is that there needs to be that delineation, that there needs to be that, you know, rite of passage of saying you're no longer a soldier, that you're letting go of these things.
I'm just glad that the amount of violence, and because who knows what was done in that lab to Laura and the kids.
Oh yeah.
Like they even bring up the fact like the kids didn't want to fight, like they didn't want to do it.
Oh yeah.
And you know, I mean psychology, for all of the great work that it has done to help people, has also done some very, very terrible things to people in, you know, the name of science and the name of medicine to try to figure things out. And just by looking at the history of psychology, like it's messed some people up. Mm-hmm. Like, so I can, knowing that and knowing what things they could have done to Laura in order to try to make her violent, just like, and the fact that she resisted, like her and the kids all like resisted and said they didn't want to fight.
It's
that in itself is like a miracle to me.
Yeah, and they were, I mean, these were some of the issues that, what was his name? Bryan Singer, who did X3. Some of the same things that he was trying to bring up in X3, X-Men United. Is that the right one? Is that the right subtitle of that movie?
I don't know. I don't care.
He was trying to bring up some of those same issues with that struggle. And that's kind of what, I mean, the whole X-Men comics have been about, is that struggle with violence and with, what is appropriate and what isn't. And I think that, like I said with my blog post this week, is that violence is a very, controversial issue, and it should be, because we should be asking where that line is. When is violence appropriate, and when is it not, and when should it be forgiven, when should it not be? And the truth is,
how far
it should
can you
always
go with
be
the
forgiven.
violence?
Yeah, and it's something that, like I said earlier, is it meaningless violence, or is it fighting for something? And in this movie, he really shows the lines. The director is brilliant. I have to say, it was a brilliant movie. Going to go on and on about the movie. Anyway, moving on to the next one. He brings up another issue in this, which is borders and refugees. The way he sets it in Mexico, in Juarez, right across from El Paso, that there's that border conflict. Well, there is right now a border conflict going on, and in the future with the wall that may be there and everything else that's going on there is, that's one of the main traffic sources for drugs coming across the border is Juarez into El Paso. And so, he did a brilliant job of setting it there and actually filming on location. Mm-hmm. And, it was... You see it. You see the darkness there. You see it, and just the shots, the B-roll of the movie. The B-roll of the movie added so much to the movie that it was kind of like, it's an essential part. Like, almost everything there was not a wasted shot, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree so, too. And the fact that not only did they have to cross the Mexico-United States border, but then they also had to cross the United States-Canada border in order to get to safety.
Yeah.
Like, that kind of is showing a little bit of political sidedness, too. Well,
right now, that's what's funny, is that even in the weeks that Logan is actually that it came out in theaters, is that you heard stories about refugees who are in the United States, who are here maybe legally or illegally, that they're crossing the Canadian border because they can't get in legally, but Canada is going to be a safe place for them, that they're still going to grant them asylum, that, if they crossed illegally. And that's, it's a big issue, and it's a controversial issue. And unfortunately, we don't have enough time to do it justice right now, because we have one more controversial issue that I'm going to bring up. And unfortunately, we're not going to have a whole lot of time to talk about it. But I think this movie really portrays another big controversial issue, which we haven't talked about before in the show, but we have touched on a little bit, is that difference between Christianity and churchianity. Like I talked about earlier, is that difference between the Eucharist being family, being coming together around a table, breaking bread together, and this whole idea of you've got to be a moral person. Is that, that's what I think Logan is struggling with, is trying to be a moral person and, figuring out what family is, what true family is.
Well, and the fact that he himself, because of his past, feels like he can't, like he knows he has done good, but he can't forgive himself for the things that he's done.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to start playing us off now here, but... if you have something to say about Logan, if you have to say, man, yeah, that movie was awesome, let's shout out at us. Let us know.
Or if you hated it, I mean, sure, you can tell us too.
Tell us why you hated it, because we want to know why somebody would hate that movie. Well, besides the violence and the excessive bloody stuff in there, but I think it was needed.
Even though I'm not a fan of violence, like I still liked it. So.
Yeah. So remember, go and find us on Twitter. Let us know with a tweet or with an email at honestfaithconvos@gmail.com is our email address. I don't know why I forgot our email address briefly there. You can also find us on Facebook. Real Honest Faith is where. Twitter is at Real Honest Faith. You can also find our website at thehonestfaith.com. Talk to us. Let us know. We also have on our Spreaker page, on our main page there, has our phone number, and that is a Google Voice phone number. So you can actually call us and leave a voicemail and let us know why you didn't like Logan or why you liked Logan. And if you had any of these conversation points that we brought up today, if they sparked anything for you, and just, let us know.
And give us suggestions on, what other movies, video games, TV shows you want us to cover next.
Yeah, and next week we're probably going to come back to The Walking Dead because tonight is the season finale.
Oh, so, I don't know, yay or sad, or I don't know how I feel about it right now.
Yeah, so we'll get back to that next week. So with all that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.